My name is Mark Renshaw. I'm 53 years old, and my life ended at 11:18 p.m. on a Tuesday in my own kitchen. The hum of the stainless steel refrigerator was the only sound, a constant, indifferent witness. The screen of my phone glowed in the dim light, displaying a text from my wife, Chloe. "Mark, I'm not coming home. I'm sorry it ended this way, but I found something real, someone who sees me. Don't try to find me. My lawyer will be in touch. C." A second message followed, a screenshot of a wire transfer confirmation, $247,500, from our joint savings account to an account I'd never seen before. The memo line was blank. It didn't need words. The meaning was clear. She was supposed to be in Austin, a wellness and branding retreat with the other influencers and life coaches she'd been orbiting for the past 2 years. I'd even helped her pack her ludicrously expensive yoga mats and the designer activewear she never seemed to sweat in. I set the phone down on the cold quartz countertop. I finished the last swallow of bourbon in my glass, the ice long since melted. The taste was flat, like everything else suddenly felt. 15 years, a decade and a half of shared mornings, Christmases, whispered dreams in the dark, reduced to 2 cold messages, and the financial screenshot. I am a senior systems architect. My world is built on logic, protocols, and fail-safes. I design networks to withstand catastrophe. I see patterns in code, anomalies in data streams, the subtle tells of a system under stress. For the last 18 months, my own marriage had been screaming with anomalies. The weekend trips to connect with her tribe that started stretching into Mondays. The new secretive passcode on her phone. The hushed conversations on the balcony of our Chicago high-rise that stopped the second I slid the door open. The vague explanations about investment opportunities in the wellness space she was curating. I saw it all. I compiled the data in my mind, a running log of discrepancies. But I said nothing. Maybe because acknowledging it would make it real. Or maybe because the man I'd become, a comfortable, well-funded accessory in Chloe Renshaw's meticulously curated life, was too tired to confront the truth. My father, a lifelong mechanic from a small town in Michigan, had tried to warn me once. We were under the hood of his old pickup truck. The smell of gasoline and autumn leaves thickened the air. "That wife of yours," he'd said, wiping his hands on an oily rag, "she's got expensive taste, son. Just make sure she's got a taste for you too, not just what you provide." I'd laughed it off then, called him a sentimental old gearhead, but the words stuck like a burr. About 6 years into our marriage, a quiet, cold dread had begun to settle in my gut. That's when I started building my own failsafe. It wasn't illegal, just protective. A series of digital walls and legal moats. I'd set up a revocable trust, a separate S-corp for my high-value consulting contracts, a few cold storage wallets for cryptocurrency. Our joint accounts, the checking, the savings, the investment portfolio she loved to show off, were just the surface layer, the user interface. She never had the admin password to see the back end. I opened my laptop, my personal one, not the company-issued machine. I navigated to a private, encrypted email server. 3 alerts from my banking security service. Attempted password resets on accounts Chloe never knew existed. She'd been thorough, I had to give her that. She'd taken the money she knew about. She just failed to realize it was petty cash. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. What do you say to a message that vaporizes your future? I typed 2 words, the only ones that felt true. Good luck. Then I called my younger brother David. He lives in Nashville, a music producer with a head for numbers almost as good as his ear for a hit. He answered on the second ring, the sound of a mixing board in the background. Hey Mark, late for you. Everything okay? Remember that rainy day protocol we drew up a few years back? I said, my voice surprisingly steady. A pause. Yeah, I remember. It's raining. Another pause, longer this time. How bad? She's gone. Took everything in the joint accounts, just sent me a Dear John text and a screenshot of the wire transfer.
Jesus, Mark, I'm sorry. Don't be, I said, the cold focus of my profession settling over me like a second skin. She just executed her exit strategy. Time I executed mine. I hung up and looked around the apartment. It was a showroom. All minimalist furniture, abstract art chosen by a decorator, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the million-dollar view of the Chicago skyline. It was Chloe's vision. I just lived in it. The only personal item was a framed photo on the bookshelf. Me, Chloe, and David on a fishing boat on Lake Michigan years ago. Our smiles real and unrehearsed. I should have noticed it was the only photo left of us. I met Chloe Winslow at a tech gala at the Art Institute. I was 38, introverted, more comfortable with servers than servers at a party. She was 32, a dazzling, ambitious force of nature in a black dress, a personal brand consultant who could talk to anyone about anything. She was fascinated by the idea of my success, the status it conveyed, but her eyes glazed over whenever I tried to explain the architecture of a secured cloud network. "It's so wonderfully complex, darling," she'd say, patting my arm. "You just keep making the magic happen. I'll handle the beautiful life." And she did. When she wanted to leave our perfectly good Lincoln Park apartment for this gold-plated pigeon coop in the sky, I signed the mortgage. When she wanted the German luxury SUV, the membership to the exclusive club, the vacations in Tuscany and Aspen, I nodded and provided. I was the quiet, reliable engine in the beautiful machine of her life. The morning after the text, I woke up at 6 a.m. Habit. The body's rhythm doesn't care if the heart is broken. I made coffee in the ridiculously complicated Italian machine she'd insisted on. While it gurgled, I logged into my primary security dashboard. With a few keystrokes, I initiated Project Anchor, the protocol David and I had architectured. First, a complete freeze on all joint financial assets, every account, every credit card. Next, a pre-drafted, highly detailed fraud alert was sent to the bank's security division, a contact I'd made during a consulting job years ago. The $247,500 transfer was flagged, frozen in transit, and queued for immediate investigation. I compiled a digital dossier, bank statements, the screenshot she'd so foolishly sent me, a timeline of her recent withdrawals, and encrypted it to my divorce attorney, Sarah Jenkins. The subject line, as discussed. Proceed. Then I called my mom, back in that small Michigan town. "Mom?" "Mark, honey, what's wrong?" She heard it in that one word. "Chloe's left. She took all the money from our shared accounts and left me a text message." A long, sad sigh traveled down the line. "Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry. That girl, her light always burned a little too bright and a little too cold. What will you do?" "Exactly what I planned to do if this ever happened," I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. "Protect myself." An hour later, my phone erupted. "Chloe." I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. Then the text started. "Mark, what did you do? My cards are declined. The bank is saying the transfer is frozen. This is ridiculous. Call me." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility address she texted me days earlier, supposedly to store some seasonal decor. I used the code she provided. Inside was a single small unit, 2 boxes of my old clothes, and a case of my books. My baseball card collection from childhood,
The toolbox my dad gave me, the letters my grandfather wrote during the war, all gone, discarded, or kept. That's when the numbness cracked, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just about money, it was about erasure. I drove to a diner I used to frequent before Chloe decided it was uninspired. I ordered bad coffee and opened my laptop. Using industry databases accessible through my firm, I started digging. The someone real she'd found was Jared Wells, at Jared Wells Life, a wellness guru with perfect teeth, a spray tan, and a following of several 100,000 for his high-intensity primal movement workouts. Chloe had been tagging him in photos for months. Hashtag collaboration, hashtag synergy, hashtag meeting of minds. What I found was a house of cards. Jared Wells' company, Primal Pulse LLC, was a masterpiece of leveraged debt, maxed out business lines of credit, loans against future membership revenue, a lease on a flagship studio in the West Loop he clearly couldn't afford. And then I found it. A loan application from 3 months prior. A $300,000 equipment loan, co-signed by Chloe Renshaw. She'd used our joint financial profile, my income, and our assets as collateral to buy her new man his shiny workout toys. I closed my laptop. The pieces snapped into place with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a love story. It was a hostile takeover. I checked into a quiet, unassuming hotel off the river. For the first time in years, the air felt clear. The problem was defined. The solution was logical. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was tasked. On Monday, I walked into my office as if it were any other day. My assistant, Lena, looked up, her eyes wide open with concern. "Mark, I wasn't sure you'd be in. Chloe has been calling all morning. She sounds frantic. If she calls again, please direct her to Sarah Jenkins," I said, my tone even. No exceptions. By noon, she'd escalated from calls to a physical presence. The receptionist buzzed me. "Mark, your wife is here. She's quite insistent." I walked out to the lobby. There she was, Chloe, dressed in head-to-toe athleisure wear that probably cost more than my first car, her blonde hair perfectly tousled. She offered me a smile, the same brilliant, calculated smile she used to close deals. "Mark, thank God," she said, her voice pitched to carry. "There's been a terrible mistake at the bank. All of our accounts are frozen. You need to call them and straighten this out immediately." "It's not a mistake, Chloe," I said, my voice low. "You transferred $250,000 without my authorization. That's bank fraud." Her smile tightened. "It was a joint account. I'm your wife. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife, who emptied our savings after sending a text message saying you'd found someone else. The bank's reaction is standard protocol." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You can't do this to me. I have commitments. Jared and I have put a deposit on a new live workspace. You're embarrassing me." "Yes, Jared," I said. "I know all about your commitments to Jared Wells." Her face went pale. "Have you been spying on me?" "I've been conducting due diligence, a necessary step when one is a victim of financial fraud." "I'll fight you for every penny," she hissed. "I deserve half of everything." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw a stranger. "Half of what's in those frozen accounts? By all means. But you seem to be under the impression that's all there is." Confusion flickered in her eyes. "What is that supposed to mean?" "You'll find out in discovery," I said, and turned my back on her. The battle lines were drawn. Her lawyers sent threatening emails about exposing shady dealings in my company. Mutual friends, the ones from her circle, sent messages calling me controlling and vindictive. I didn't engage. I went to the public gym, lifted weights until my muscles screamed, and focused on the data. A few days later, my attorney called. "We've traced it," Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional. "For the last 14 months, Chloe has been making regular transfers from your joint account, starting at a few hundred, escalating to thousands. Most of it flowed into an account under Primal Pulse LLC." "How much?" I asked, though I already knew. "Just over 80,000. And Mark, she also co-signed a commercial lease for his new studio space. She used your joint tax returns to qualify." Financial infidelity meet actual fraud. The confirmation was a cold knife, but it was expected. She hadn't just fallen in love. She had been systematically looting our marriage to finance her escape and her new partner's failing business.
That evening, a text from an unknown number lit up my phone. "Back off. You're hurting someone who didn't do anything to you. Let her be happy. Jared." I almost smiled. The puppet master had stepped from behind the curtain. I drove to David's place in Nashville the next weekend. Over beers on his back porch, I laid it out. "I need everything you can legally find on Jared Wells and Primal Pulse. Bankruptcies, liens, loan applications, everything." David, the maestro of digital digging, got to work. A few hours later, he whistled. "Brother, this is a masterpiece of financial stupidity." He turned the screen to me. "He's not just in debt, he's a debt factory. And look here." He pointed to a loan document. The big one, the equipment loan, $300K. Chloe co-signed, but the fine print, it stipulates joint and several liability with her spouse. They used your marriage to get a lower interest rate. I stared at the digital signature. My wife had legally tethered me to a sinking ship without my knowledge. "She has no idea what she signed," I said quietly, "and neither does he." The following week, I went to see Jared Wells. His studio was a temple of vanity, mirrors, neon signs, the smell of disinfectant and ambition. He was exactly like his photos, artificially honed with a practiced vacant smile. "Hey Mark, hey man," he said, oozing false camaraderie. "Chloe's mentioned you. Everything okay? We need to talk. Privately." I followed him to his glass-walled office. I placed a folder on his desk. "This is a summary of your financial situation. The loans, the leases, all co-signed by my wife using assets she no longer has access to." He flipped through the pages, his tan beginning to look waxy. "This is all legit. Business partnerships. The banks approve them based on our combined financial strength. That strength is now gone. They will call these loans due. All of them." "What do you want?" he asked, his voice losing its breezy tone. "I want you to understand the situation you're in, and I want the personal items Chloe took from my home. My father's watch, family photos. They're of no value to you." He just stared, the reality of his precarious house of cards finally dawning on him. 2 days later, a box arrived at my hotel. The photos were there, the watch was there, no note. The legal machinery ground on. The emergency asset freeze was made permanent. Chloe's attempts to open new lines of credit were denied. Finally, she broke. The call came late one night. "What have you done, Chloe?" she screamed, her voice raw with panic. "The bank is calling Jared's loans. They're taking everything. His studio, the equipment, everything." "That's the consequence of fraud, Chloe. This is about revenge. You're destroying him to punish me." "No," I said, my voice calm. "I'm protecting myself from the financial mess you created. You committed fraud. The bank is simply acting on it." There was a silence, then a pathetic, calculated softening in her voice. "Mark, please, we can fix this. Come home, we can talk, we can work it out." 15 years, and she still thought I was that easily manipulated. "There's nothing to work out, Chloe.
The divorce is proceeding. The fraud investigation is proceeding. And you and Jared will have to face the consequences of your choices. I ended the call and blocked her number. The mediation was a quiet, brutal affair. Chloe looked diminished, her expensive clothes hanging on her like a costume. Her lawyer blustered. My attorney, Sarah, simply slid a new document across the table. The bank's forensic audit is complete. They found evidence of forged signatures on the commercial lease application. They are referring the matter to the state's attorney for prosecution. The color drained from Chloe's face. Prosecution? Mark, you wouldn't. I met her gaze. It's out of my hands. The bank pressed charges. The fight left her eyes. The settlement I offered was more than fair. A life raft in a sea of debt she'd created for herself. She got to keep her car, her personal belongings, her struggling consulting business. She walked away with no alimony and sole responsibility for the massive debts she'd co-signed. She signed the papers without another word. As we left, she caught my arm. Her touch felt alien. I never thought you had this in you, she whispered. You were always so passive. That was a choice, I said, gently removing my arm from her grasp. Just like this was yours. A month later, I sold the high-rise apartment. I bought a small, sturdy craftsman house in Evanston, near the lake. It needed work, the kind of tangible, physical work I craved. David flew up to help me renovate the kitchen. We worked in comfortable silence, measuring, cutting, building something real. You heard anything from her? He asked, holding a cabinet door in place. I heard she moved to Arizona with Jared. His studio was bought by a franchise. Last I checked, he was trying to be a life coach in Scottsdale. David shook his head. You could have buried them, the fraud charges. What would be the point? I said, driving a screw home. They're not my problem anymore. That evening, after David left, I sat on my new back porch. The neighborhood was quiet. I could hear kids playing down the street, the distant hum of the L train. It was real. It was quiet. I thought about the last 15 years, the slow, quiet erosion of myself, how I had allowed my life to become a supporting role in someone else's story. I thought about my dad, his rough hands and simple wisdom. He'd known. He'd seen the flaw in the design. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt quiet. The constant low-grade hum of anxiety that had been my soundtrack for years was gone, replaced by the simple, solid silence of a problem solved, a system secured. The next morning, I called my office. I told them I was taking a month of accrued leave. I packed a bag, loaded my fishing gear into my truck, and pointed it north, toward Michigan, toward the lakes and the silence and the memory of a simpler time. There was no itinerary, no expectations, just the open road ahead, and for the first time in a very long time, no one else's destination in mind. The ledger was finally balanced, the system was clean, and I was free.